Everyone, and welcome to this month's Lunch and Learn. Great to have you there. It's good to see a good number of people there attending the session. This Lunch and Learn is a focus on a piece of work that I know our Health and Safety Committee has been working on for a long time, developing an updated cylinder customer switching protocol. It's an important topic because fundamentally it affects the customer experience and that affects the whole industry and its reputation. But it's a topic that touches on competitive tensions between the retailers, logistics, different practices, different preferences, different systems. And so it's pretty hard to strike a balance that keeps everyone happy. I know the Health and Safety Committee has been working really hard at it. So I think they've come up with a really nice document, some really good materials here. So for the presentation today, Louisa George, who is the Safety and Wellness Partner at Genesis and also our Health and Safety Committee Chair, is going to lead off. And Rodney Profit, also committee member, Operations Manager at Rockgas, is going to join in as well. So really interested to see what we've come up with here, Louisa. Over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Let me just share the screen here and we'll get started. So at the end of the session today, for any questions that you might have, please do pop them into the chat and we'll come to them at the end of the session. And as we move into the topic for today's webinar, I just wanted to take a moment to thank the original contributors to the review of the document. Quite a few of them have actually moved on and out of the industry now, but I know we have one of the OGs still around, and that is Valerie Campbell from Rockgas Dunedin. And I wanted to give a shout out to Valerie for her work in that initial review group. It was really important to have your say, and we really appreciated it. Now, at the heart of the protocol itself, just move on to the next slide. At the heart of the protocol itself sits the key message lies with all of us working together for the sake of the customer and in a way that minimises disruption to each of our businesses as well. Putting the safety of the customer and the customer experience first to ensure safe and seamless switching takes place. And what that means is that we all ensure customer sites are safe and compliant and manage the switch in a way that minimises disruption to both the customer and each other. While we all operate in a competitive market, the reality is that our success really does rely on us working together. And with that in mind, we have a look at who the protocol applies to, since we've covered off the purpose. Now, the protocol applies to retail businesses in New Zealand, to all locations where a retailer supplies LPG cylinders, and when a customer delivery location is switched from one retailer to another. It applies to all cylinder types less than 90 kg, with the exception of bulk LPG 222 cylinders and tanks, which require additional coordination between retailers to ensure a safe and compliant transfer. Now, protocol adherence. On the right-hand side, you'll see a little preview for our infographic that we'll talk a little bit more about later. Protocol adherence. Now, each retailer needs to strive to comply with the protocol. A customer switch will remain valid even if the retailer doesn't fully comply with the protocol. And if a retailer has designated a franchisee or agent, the retailer is responsible for communicating and overseeing adherence to the protocol expectations. Whether or not a retailer is a GasNZ member, the proper switching protocols must be followed to ensure that the safety and compliance remains at our customer sites. Over to you, Rodney.
Cool, thanks, Louisa. So just talking in the nitty-gritty here of what we do from a day-to-day basis. In most cases, cylinder customers can switch from one retailer to another at any time. It depends obviously on the contract arrangement with the outgoing retailer. But generally you'll get rung up and someone wants to switch. The incoming retailer is asked to notify the outgoing retailer within 20 working days. Now, that was set upon because it represents basically one working month. Both the cylinder label and the cylinder switch notice must be provided, and samples of those will be shown later. They're not too dissimilar to what we've used in the past, with some details on them, just to make sure you know which customer it was, which site it was from. Incoming retailers asked to remove all cylinders belonging to the outgoing retailer. We don't want them just moved to a different spot on site. We don't want them just pushed down a bank. They're supposed to take them off site. The customers don't understand the rules we work under, and so it's down to the retailers and their people to make sure the customers still compliant with the rules. So we're asking them to be removed from the site. When the incoming retailer acquires a new location, they've got to keep the cylinder volumes for that site compliant and make sure it remains compliant. Hopefully this is nothing new to anyone. Then at the bottom, when you take the cylinders back to your location or you're dropping them off to the nearest depot for the outgoing retailer, we've put a little bit in there about arranging alternative acceptable ways of doing things, because not every retailer has a depot in every town or every area. So sometimes there may have to be workarounds, which is where the various retailers should talk to each other and work out the differences. Next slide, please. Cool. So once again, cylinders return to the outgoing retailer within 20 working days. Otherwise talk to each other and work out alternative arrangements. Where there's residual gas in the cylinders, it's up to the outgoing retailer to confirm it and decide on the rules they have with the customer as to whether there's unused gas credits or other things to occur. The incoming retailer must not decant LPG from the outgoing retailer's cylinder. There's been a few issues in this in the recent past, so that's been added in there. You should arrange suitable drop-off times with the outgoing retailer and follow the site safety instructions. In most cases, we go to each other's sites on a fairly regular basis, so this shouldn't be too different from what we've currently done. The outgoing retailer must accept the return of their cylinders and has responsibility to manage the quantities on their sites. We can't have someone not taking their cylinders back because that then puts problems onto the incoming retailer's site. Back to you.
Thanks, Rodney. The next two slides cover off cylinder labels and the switch notice. Basically, we're pointing out that the most important part of this is information flow as well. So both of them, both the label and the switch notice, have requirements in terms of what's the mandatory information that we do require to be passed from the incoming retailer to the outgoing retailer. Both of those label and switch notice, we have examples or templates for in the protocol that you can either copy or use. And it is the responsibility, for example, of each retailer to provide their own labels. And a call out with the labels as well, that we need to make sure that they're written in permanent marker. It must stay readable. We know that they're stored outside in rough environmental conditions, but we must make sure that that information flow is maintained. We require the full delivery address, the date the cylinders are exchanged, number of cylinders, and there's on our example here, we've got you can circle the previous retailer name or write the retailer in there. If you know if there are customer-owned cylinders, it's also important to pop that on there too. And we do notice that there's some optional information that could be useful as well. For example, the collecting LPG driver name. If any of the information is a bit blurred or unable to be read, having the driver name helps to identify the date, the driver name, and the route that they might have been on and picked up the cylinders from. And also a space, optional again, to collect the total weight of the cylinder and contents. For the switch notice, similar types of information are recorded. We want to make sure that the switch notice is provided from the incoming retailer to the outgoing retailer. That can be done either digitally or in a hard copy format. The outgoing retailer, we want them to acknowledge receipt of the switch notice, and that makes sure that we don't end up with the, hey, you didn't tell us about this customer, you didn't tell us about this customer situation. This whole thing is about clear, consistent communication. Back to you, Rodney.
Cool. Now, one of the problem areas is the customer-owned cylinders. Most of us know because of the colour coding on cylinders, whose cylinders are what in most cases, but customer-owned cylinders are a particular issue in some areas. If you know they're a customer-owned cylinder, we're asking you to note it down. The outgoing retailer has the obligation, once to get the cylinders back, to sort it out with the customer. And it can be a problem area. So once again, it comes down to people talking to each other. If you do strike issues in this area, please. A total count to be kept by each retailer of customer-owned cylinders owed to each other. And this is so unbranded cylinders can be exchanged from time to time. So you don't end up with too many or too little. Once again, this is going to take a bit of coordination if you have this issue in your area to work it through. If the outgoing retailer owns cylinder equipment at the customer delivery location, and while this doesn't occur that often on residentials, it can occur on some other sites where you've still got cylinder banks, they've got to talk to each other, sort it out, the two retailers. Hopefully this makes sense to everyone, and hopefully this occurs most of the time anyway, so there shouldn't be nothing new there. You know, there can be some contract stuff in there if you're looking at taking over commercial sites or bigger sites, and you know, there could be a little bit more work needing to be done in that space compared to residential sites. Any changes must be reasonably agreed without delay between the retailers. I'm sure most of you are aware that, you know, some customers who have said, I want to move, they'll chase you for unused gas credits or have the cylinders come back and et cetera, fairly quickly. So while we have a month to hand stuff back to each other, effectively a working month, you will often find that customers are already chasing the outgoing retailer. So once again, talking to each other to resolve those issues, because we all want to keep the customers within our industry, is valuable. Occasionally, and we've got some sample photos here from Cyclone Gabrielle and Lake Auhau fire, occasionally there will be an emergency event. In those cases, civil defence or other emergency services may just call on whoever's local that they know in terms of a retailer to come in and pick up all the cylinders or clean up the area. And that will often depend on who's known locally and where the situation occurs. So basically we're asking everyone to work together and work through the issues. You may be asked to collect everyone's cylinders because they only want one agent in the area and they want them to go through in a structured way to do things. And then they'll come back to whoever's picked them up site and request the owners to retrieve them. There could be a lot of complexity in this space. Once again, it's about people talking to each other. Onward.
Thanks, Rodney. As we've reiterated as a common theme coming through, you know, the aim is to work things out as grown-ups, talk to each other, depot to depot, retailer to retailer. However, we know sometimes the devil is in the detail, which is why we've tried to keep things pretty simple at the face of things. Where you have been unable to reach a compromise or resolve an issue, we have set out an area for monitoring and assurance in the protocol. So you can reach out to GasNZ, who will help to mediate and find a resolution. We will track and monitor the recurrence of any complaints or issues so we can make sure we're tracking and looking at how we can improve the process for future iterations. And lastly, but not leastly, before we move to the questions, where to find the protocol and the infographic. So the protocol and infographic are both available on the GasNZ website under the resources tab. You can download both of these, and the infographic itself, we're really keen to see them used as digital posters or posters up and around your depots, up and around your areas. So the key information can be quite visually and easily passed on to the team members and act as a prompt. It doesn't contain all of the devil in the details stuff that's in the protocol, but it certainly provides a really good, clear understanding or infographic pictorial view of the key components that you guys can talk about at your toolboxes and things like that. So yeah, to summarize, no matter whether No matter which retailer a customer chooses, their safety and the integrity of the site mustn't be compromised, right? This means we need to operate with the bigger picture in mind. Act as grown-ups, talk to each other. Yes, we're competitors, but we're also stewards of the industry, and we uphold the reputation and the standards of the LPG sector in New Zealand. So we need to continue to work together for both safety and customer satisfaction. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Rodney, before we move into question time?
No, I think you covered it off, right? We're all players in the same industry. The gas industry as a whole in New Zealand is taking some bad flack at the moment, or bad press. It's important that we don't add to that, and by working together and keeping in our minds the customer and what they're experiencing is quite valuable. I think you also made a good point that some of these situations do get complex, but that's where people have the advantage of being able to talk things through with each other, because not every part of the country is the same, and not everyone has an agent in every part of the country. But if they've got customers in your area, they must pass through town from time to time. So it may be possible that instead of you dropping something 200 k's away, when they're in town, they can pick up from you. That's where people talking to each other resolve these things. Like you say, on to the questions.
Does anyone have any?
Must be some, because I can't believe we went through all of that without someone having some questions.
We do have someone with their hand up. Is it Jacques?
Jacques, we can activate your camera and microphone if you want to come in, if you don't want to put something in writing. Brian, can you allow... Here's a question from David Whitfield. Great protocol. Do any retailers still own the regulator and pigtails? And if so, would these be switched out or left on site?
We at Rockgas don't own them. On residentials, you may find if you've got a cylinder bank in an industrial type situation that it's at a different arrangement. So you would have to work that through one by one in industrial settings.
Okay. Brian, do you want to see it? Are you able to let Jacques in? Is he? Here we go. You're on mute, so you'll have to unmute if you want to talk. Here we go.
No, just out of interest, just for anyone, what sort of risk assessment do the drivers take when they go and collect cylinders like that? Oh, well, as an example, I was part of that incident or that occasion for other reasons, but what's a typical risk assessment within reason that a driver would take to ensure that it's safe for both the driver and public?
In those emergency situations, you're normally guided by either civil defence or the emergency services. We also have our own protocols. So something like that, there was a day or two's worth of figuring out how we'd move through the area, what we would and wouldn't touch, how you'd flag stuff in Cyclone Gabrielle that you couldn't touch, just so people knew it was there. So, you're in the emergencies, you're sort of led by whoever's in charge of the scene, and you have your own stuff that you overlay it.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone, either written or by raising a hand? Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming in. I guess thanks for this. I think this is a great piece of work, and I really hope it gets out there. For those of you who are on the call, I know I saw a couple of people came in during the end. We will record the session and we'll make it available, or we have recorded it and we'll make it available, so you can see what happened from the beginning. And then The materials themselves will be up there on the resources page on our website. And please, as you read through, if you've got any questions, please just fire them through either to any of the three of us here or through to our info@GasNZ email address. Really, really happy to get your feedback and to take that on board. So thank you very much. Thanks, Louisa. Thank you, Rodney. Great session.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Ka kite
See you all.
anō.
Okay.